Welcome to the Depth Dive. Today, we're looking at some really interesting ideas about wealth and poverty.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. We're drawing from a recorded talk that offers a specific, maybe philosophical take on it all.
Exactly. Why some people seem to have abundance, others face hardship. These are questions, well, they touch everyone, don't they?
Absolutely. Whether you're thinking about your own situation or just looking at the world, wondering about these dynamics, we all want some comfort.
Right. And seeing disparities, it naturally makes you ask questions.
hmm
So our mission today, really, is to explore the key principles from this talk. It's a view on wealth and poverty that kind of goes beyond the usual economic explanations.
It does. It's looking at a different kind of cause and effect, you could say.
Before we jump right into that, maybe it's worth just pausing for a second, thinking about your own beliefs, maybe assumptions about wealth and poverty.
That's a really good point. We all come at this with our own history, what society tells us.
Yeah, and sometimes, honestly, thinking that our own actions might play a part in our finances, well, it can feel a little bit uncomfortable, can't
Oh,
it?
for sure. That's a totally natural reaction. This idea that, past choices could link directly to your bank balance now.
Right.
It can bring up all sorts of things. Skepticism, maybe you disagree. You might immediately think, well, what about the economy or systemic issues or just plain luck?
All valid points, of course. But the perspective we're exploring today offers this distinct lens. And at its core, there's this principle. The idea that generosity, really caring for others, is somehow a root cause of wealth.
And the flip side, stinginess, selfishness,
Yeah.
those are the seeds of poverty.
Now, it's important to say this is presented as like a foundational principle in this specific viewpoint.
Exactly. It's not necessarily painted as this super simple, immediate thing. The talk gets into the nuances.
Yeah, there's this story, isn't there, about someone told to tackle their stingy karma, basically.
Right. And the advice wasn't just, go pray more or retreat. It was actively do things, help people, engage in generosity.
Confront the tendency head on through action.
Yeah. And that's contrasted with this image, this kind of anecdote of two people traveling. One looks rich, seems generous. The other looks poor, seems maybe less giving.
And the suggestion is that these outward things, they might actually reflect these deeper patterns, these tendencies that shape things over time.
Exactly. So it's not always like you give $1 today, you get 2 back tomorrow.
No. The talk really stresses that the connection between our actions and, well, our finances, it's not always obvious right away.
Precisely. Someone might have been really generous in the past, but they're struggling now. Maybe other factors, other past actions are playing out. And conversely, someone who's wealthy now might have planted those seeds of generosity way back, even if they don't seem that way currently.
So this introduces that concept, often called karma, but as it's presented here, it sounds much more complex, multifaceted.
Right. Not just a simple good-bad ledger with instant results.
Yeah.
Think of it more like the cumulative effect of what we intend and what we actually do.
Okay, cumulative. That makes sense.
And the goal isn't really to judge who deserves what. It's more about trying to understand these interconnected dynamics.
So you can live more mindfully, make choices that lead to better outcomes, maybe long term.
That's the idea, to gain some insight into these principles.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. How does this view frame the practical advantages of wealth and the disadvantages of poverty?
Well, from this perspective, wealth obviously brings more freedom, more choices.
Yeah.
And often it comes with more social respect. People tend to listen more, value the opinions of those with money.
That's definitely something you see reflected in society, isn't it?
It is. And the talk contrasts that with poverty, where people often face, well, less social standing, real limitations, even in places that aim for equality.
A feeling of being overlooked, maybe, not having the same voice.
Something like that, yeah. A sense of constraint.
And it's really important to keep stressing this is different from just purely economic theories.
Absolutely. The talk does briefly mention that economic idea, great wealth by heaven, small wealth by diligence, big opportunities versus hard work.
But the main focus here stays on this philosophical idea of cause and effect, this karma, as the sort of primary engine driving things.
That's the core of it. And to make these ideas less abstract, the talk gives quite a few specific examples, actions, and their potential long-term consequences. Should we get into some of those?
Yeah, let's unpack this a bit. One example was public service. How does that fit in?
Okay, so the idea is that if you're genuinely dedicated to serving the public good, really focused on benefiting others, Even if your salary isn't huge right now, that can actually plant seeds for future prosperity.
So the positive intention and action create this momentum.
Kind of, yeah. It's contrasted with, say, officials who use their position just for personal gain. That's said to lead to negative outcomes down the line. The speaker even mentioned a sort of rare historical case of a very high-ranking official who was actually poor, suggesting it's unusual. That generally, true service tends to yield positive returns eventually.
Interesting. What about how we treat the environment? That came up too.
Yes, environmental stewardship. So, actively planting trees, protecting nature that's presented as something that can contribute to wealth.
And the opposite.
Deforestation, destroying resources. That's linked to poverty. There's an anecdote about a forestry worker, I think,
Yeah.
who apparently became more prosperous when he shifted from just guarding the forest to actively planting new trees.
Yeah.
The idea is that nurturing life, nurturing resources, creates positive results.
That's quite a clear image. Then there was the community benefit example, like building a bridge together.
Ah, yes, the bridge. That really illustrates the power of contributing to the common good. The talk describes how the villagers who really pitched in, enthusiastically helped build it, they saw increased prosperity later on.
And those who didn't.
Those who kind of shirked the work, avoided the responsibility, they faced poverty. So a single significant act that benefits the whole community can have these really lasting positive effects for the individuals involved.
No, it's not just solo actions, but our collective contribution matters too. What about influencing others, guiding them towards good things?
That's another angle. The talk suggests that encouraging others to do good deeds can actually result in future support from those people, maybe even financial help.
Really?
Yeah, there's an example given of a monastic who receives consistent donations, and it's attributed to her past work guiding others onto a virtuous path. It's like by helping others generate good karma, you also benefit.
Okay. And the flip side of that coin, encouraging bad stuff.
Unsurprisingly, yeah, that's contrasted sharply. Inciting harm, leading others down negative paths, that's said to lead to future hardship, maybe even demands for repayment, in a sense, from those you negatively influenced. Shows how interconnected it all is.
The talk also went into interactions with spiritual practitioners, religious institutions. What was the takeaway there?
Basically, a strong caution against exploiting or taking advantage of them. People dedicated to spiritual paths or the institutions themselves. It suggests potentially really serious negative consequences. Respect and reverence are key.
A strong warning indeed. What about just being part of a religion, doing the rituals, but maybe not actively living virtuously?
Yeah, that's addressed too. The idea that just being a member or just performing rituals without cultivating inner virtue, without actually helping others that might not lead to prosperity, might even mean continued hardship.
So going through the motions isn't enough.
Exactly. It challenges that idea that simply reciting text or whatever automatically guarantees merit. It emphasizes embodying the principles, compassion, service.
Makes sense. It has to be lived. Okay, let's talk practical stuff. Money management. What did the talk say there?
Pretty straightforward, actually. Spend less than you earn, you accumulate wealth. Spend more, you head towards poverty.
Simple but true. And it extends that to avoiding debt. Because debt is essentially using wealth you haven't actually acquired yet. There was a cautionary tale about using your house as collateral for a business loan.
Oh, yeah.
Highlighting the risk, the potential to lose everything if it goes wrong. Basically, live within your means.
Okay. And our jobs, our livelihood, how does that factor in?
Well, the suggestion is that professions that genuinely benefit others tend to generate positive effects, contributing to wealth, whereas professions that cause harm.
Like what?
The example used was maybe someone whose job facilitates excessive consumption, like maybe alcohol. That could lead to negative consequences for them.
Okay.
Contrasted with, say, making nutritious food or building needed infrastructure, things that clearly help. But it also acknowledges it's complex, right? Assessing the long-term impact of any job isn't always easy.
True. The intention and the overall impact seem crucial. Resource management was another point, like wasting things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Wasting electricity, water, just general resources that's linked to potential hardship. Conserving them, being mindful, contributes to a more comfortable life. It's about valuing what you have.
Okay. And how we treat employees, if you have them.
Big one. Treating workers fairly, looking out for their well-being that's said to help the employer's prosperity continue. Exploiting them, conversely, can lead to a decline later on. Ethical treatment benefits everyone ultimately.
Right. The talk also mentioned forgiveness versus selfishness. How did that relate?
It highlighted the difference between making Sacrifices for the greater good versus, fighting tooth and nail for personal gain.
Hmm.
There were stories shared, contrasting siblings dealing with inheritance or a senior monastic yielding a position, showing how letting go, being generous, can bring unexpected positive results, while clinging and fighting can backfire.
And finally, humility versus arrogance, especially regarding wealth.
Yeah, the idea is that sustained wealth often goes hand in hand with humility, respect for others, especially those less fortunate. Becoming arrogant after you gain wealth, that's presented as a quick way to lose it. Keeping perspective, basically.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
it's a lot to think about. A really different framework for wealth and poverty.
Yeah.
And then the talk takes this surprising turn talking about the gift of poverty.
Yes. This is such a key, maybe paradoxical part of this perspective.
Yeah.
That poverty can actually be a valuable gift, but specifically for those who cultivate wisdom and virtue alongside it.
A gift. How on earth is poverty a gift?
Well, the explanation is that experiencing hardship can foster a depth of compassion, of empathy, that wealth often shields you from. When you've really struggled, you might connect with and understand the suffering of others on a much deeper level.
That rings true. People who've overcome adversity often have this profound understanding, don't they?
Exactly. And that connects to the idea that maybe those who've known hardship are better placed to create truly meaningful things in the world. Art, service, just a deeper connection to life's realities. Their experience gives them a unique lens.
Okay. So if someone is experiencing poverty, how do they, harness this gift, maybe even shift things? The talk laid out some principles for transmuting poverty, right?
It did. 4 key things, I think. First, acknowledge your situation. Accept it. But without that desperate craving for wealth, acceptance is the first step.
Okay, acknowledge and accept. What's next?
Second, try to understand that the hardship might stem from past actions or mistakes. Not in a self-blaming way, but with a kind of quiet reflection, looking for patterns to learn from.
Right. Understanding potential causes.
Third, consciously use the experience to deepen your empathy. Let it open your heart to the suffering of others. Cultivate that compassion.
And the final one?
Practice giving, even within your limited means. Share what you can. Help others where possible. The intention, the effort behind giving even small things is incredibly valuable.
That's powerful. What about ethics? Any specific advice for people in poverty on that front?
Yes, definitely. A strong emphasis on never using unethical means to get money. Maintain your dignity, your self-respect, but without being arrogant. And importantly, keep up any spiritual practice you have, regardless of finances.
Okay. Now, flip side. What about principles for those who are wealthy? Equally important in this view, right?
Absolutely. Wealth is seen as a responsibility, not just for personal fun. Key guidelines include: maintain humility. Don't be arrogant.
Yeah.
Be generous, but thoughtfully, not wastefully.
Thoughtful generosity.
Right. Help others quietly without needing recognition. Crucially, prioritize inner development, spiritual growth alongside the material side. And maybe even engage in some simple, beneficial work to stay grounded, maintain that positive connection.
So it's this ongoing thing, this cycle of responsibility, mindful action, no matter your bank balance.
Exactly. It's all about seeing the deep connections between what we do, what we intend, and what unfolds. It offers this framework that, goes way beyond just economics.
This has been a really illuminating deep dive, a very unique way to look at wealth and poverty. These principles, they're complex. They might challenge how you usually think about this stuff.
For sure.
But they definitely give you a lot to reflect on, a framework for looking at your own life, the dynamics around you.
Indeed. And it really leaves you thinking about that interconnectedness, doesn't it? How our actions, big and small, can ripple outwards in ways we might not even realize.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. Considering these ideas, what's one small shift you can maybe make in your own actions starting today? We really hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights, perhaps a new lens for understanding prosperity and hardship.